Welcome back, everybody, to What Do You Know with Nick and Devin. I am Devin.
And I'm Nick.
Happy Pride, everybody. Thanks for being here.
That's
your happy Pride noise?
Happy Pride with a thumbs up.
At the parade?
Yeah. So I just kind of walk around.
I mean, like, everyone else is going to be giving finger guns anyway, so it's fine.
Yes, what we're most known for, finger guns.
It's the gayest way to say hello.
That's what I call it.
Wild. Everyone will agree with me. It's fine.
I'm not quite sure about that, but we'll test it out.
Nick, I have a quick question for you.
Please.
What's your relationship with your doctor? Do you like going to the doctor?
My doctor and I.
Don't break the HIPAA code.
No, I'm not gonna break HIPAA on myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What do you call it? No, my doctor's great. I've been going to the same what's the word I'm looking for? Practice, like most of my life.
Oh, nice.
So I went from one doctor to another. They're fine, and then I have like specialists and things, and they're. I like my primary though.
Okay,
yeah.
That's good. Do you like going to the doctor, or is it just like a ugh?
It depends. I don't go for the doctor unless I have to. I'm like that kind of person. I'm like, I'm sick. It's fine. Just put some super glue on it.
Dayquil,
yeah, exactly. So I mean, every time I go, I usually have to get like blood drawn or whatever. So it's just kind of like it feels more like I'm going to the groceries. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm excited about it. It's just
more
like
of a chore.
It's more of like I have to do this and get it done. So,
sure.
And then I end up like, this is what happens. Is that I go in and then we end up talking for like 25 minutes.
Oh.
And the last 5 minutes is like, oh, so like everything good? And I'm like, well, I have these questions, but now I only have 5 minutes left. So, which is my fault. I will.
You can't be so nice.
I can't be so nice. And she's complaining about her stuff, and I'm like, I'm just, and I'm like, I have like a list of, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I go, oh, well, I don't want to run you over. So, even though I'm like your second appointment of the day. Yeah. But anyway, that's, I enjoy my doctor. Do you have a primary care physician?
I did. Well, I did, and then she moved, and so now I have to get another primary care. Otherwise, I have to drive like way too far to see the same doctor.
And when did that happen?
Last year. So like I'm still
okay.
Yeah. I only saw her once
like
so far.
5 years ago.
Yeah, no. I only saw her once. And she was like, "Hey, you're in pretty good shape. If you don't want to have a yearly doctor appointment, you could be here every other year." And I was like, "That's the best news I've ever heard." I'm very surprised. I'm in terrible shape.
Well, I'm in awful shape. Number one. Number two, you should be getting an annual physical.
That's what I thought. And then she's like, "Nah, you're good." I was like, sick. But then she left.
Maybe that's why she said it.
Yeah. It's just like, I'm out of here. I don't have to deal with it. No, but like it hasn't been a year since that appointment. So I've been waiting for that year mark to schedule and find a new doctor.
And no ailments between then and now.
Knock on wood.
Thank God. Look at you go. You found some.
Found some. Yeah, no, it's been all Gucci, as they used to say.
No.
No?
No, we're okay. Thank you.
Was that chuggy of me?
Just end it.
All right. Anyway.
Pulls out gun.
Yeah, otherwise I hate going to the doctor. But I do like to donate blood. So there's weird
so you can donate blood. Rub that in my face.
Yeah, sorry. I'm an O positive donor, so I should be donating a lot of blood.
All the time, like daily, honestly, yeah. I remember in high school, because we had the blood drives at LT.
Oh, yeah.
So, yikes. So in high school, I went to go donate blood because I was ignorant and innocent, and I was like, I want to donate blood. I want to do my part. You know what I mean? Very American of me. And so I went, and you have to fill out the survey, medical stuff, blah, 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 whatever. Well, one of the questions is, have you had, sexual interaction with someone of the same sex? And so I was like, yes. And then I'm filling it out, whatever, and I hand it to the person. And it's weird because it's just like tables set up in a gym, right? Like it's not
very private.
There's not at all. They're like, you're in high school, whatever. And so
there's no way that this private information will come to hurt you later.
Correct. Like on a podcast. And so, so the guy's going through the questionnaire, like making sure like all the answers are what I said.
Right.
Blah,
you
blah,
haven't
blah.
been to the Falkland Islands in 1983 or whatever it is.
If that was a question,
it's a question of my survey.
Wild. Still today?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Why?
I don't know. Something
okay.
to do with like the Argentinian-British War of the Falkland Island Wars.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Future episode.
I'll do an episode on it later.
Thank you. What do you call it? And so he like goes to, I think it was like question like 13.
Yeah.
He's like, so it was 18. I don't know why that stuck with me. Anyway, so he was like, so you marked yes for this question, but like doesn't read it out loud. Like points at it, even though he's read every other question out loud. And I was like, yes. He's like, are you sure? And I was like, yes. And then we keep going. He's like, we'll come back to it. And I was like, the answer isn't going to change.
Right.
So we kept going down and finished off this survey. And then he went back and he's like, so are you positive? And I was like, yes. Like, I don't understand. Like, do you want me to describe it to you? Like, what are we doing here? And
it was a cool summer night.
Yeah, exactly. Set the scene.
Yeah.
And then he was just like, yeah, you can't donate blood. And then I was angry. And then I left. What a fun time. And then I learned that I cannot donate blood. So, but there's the legislation trying to get passed to change that.
Is. Yeah.
I don't know if it did or if it's trying. I think it's trying.
Sure.
I don't think we can yet. But my thing even then was like, you're going to test it like all the others.
Right.
So what's the point here?
Right.
Anyway, that was me. That's all I got. That's my blood story. You didn't ask about it, but
I didn't, but it was a great story. Thank you.
How did we get there? Blood? Did you talk about blood drawn? Blood?
Yeah, I said that I don't really go to the doctor, but I do donate my blood.
That's it.
Yeah.
See?
Because I like to donate blood. I don't like to go to the doctor.
Weird. What's the hesitation with the doctor?
That's just a pain in the ass.
You're just talking to someone.
There's the rub.
There's actually a lot of psych up before we do the podcast. Yeah.
A lot of small talk before we get here.
Gotta warm it up. All right. So what do you got for me today?
So my topic for today, it's kind of an extensive one. And there's a lot of back information that I'm going to be giving a little bit.
Okay.
But I'll first ask the titular question. Nicholas.
Yes.
What do you know about Alan L. Hart?
Alan L. Hart.
Alan Hart.
Thank you. The removal of the middle initial really helped me there. It sounds familiar, but I don't know why.
Okay, great.
So that's it.
H-A-R-T?
That's what I assumed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like the beating heart, but more like the stag, the heart.
Does he have a stag as an emblem?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that's
what you went
where
with.
I went to.
Ah, got it. Very poetic.
Thank you. All right. So, you don't know much. Great.
I don't think so.
Let's get into it. It's the early 20th century, and an infectious disease is the #1 killer across the United States. Like all good monsters, from tales of old, this disease went by many names. White Death, Consumption, Cook's Disease, King's Evil. But we all know the true name. Tuberculosis.
Incredible.
Would that get you in the right mindset?
It really, I mean, I'm involved in this narrative now.
Excellent. Now, as silly as that was, tuberculosis, TB for short, I'll be referring to it as that throughout, is a horrendous disease. It spreads through the air whenever someone with TB coughs, sneezes, spits, or even speaks.
Very
terrifying.
COVID. I like COVID.
Absolutely. That's how the worst diseases spread.
Airborne.
According to the World Health Organization, WHO or WHO, 10 million people are diagnosed with TB each year. This is a current statistic.
Oh my God.
1.5 million wind up dying from the disease every year? Despite it being preventable and curable.
That's crazy.
Very much so. To think that TB is still so prevalent. I mean, it's not prevalent? Prevalent. Move to the L over.
Wait, I think you were going like relevant and prevalent like together.
Probably.
Prevalent.
The coffee's kicking
right.
in. Finally.
Right.
So it's I think here in the U.S. we don't have nearly as many cases as other elsewhere in the world that I'll get to in a little bit. So I think that's why we kind of are a little ignorant to how much this disease like kills every day.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's for a lot of diseases, to be honest.
Yeah, we're very lucky here. I mean, now people aren't getting vaccinated, so that's fucked.
Yeah. But, measles are back, baby.
Go get vaccinated.
For the love of Christ.
I know if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably one of the people that get vaccinated. So, but tell your friends.
But at the same time, we just want to make sure that everyone's aware of getting vaccinated.
Right. Now, the problem with TB is that the symptoms will often present mildly for a prolonged period of time, meaning that folks most likely won't seek treatment until their condition is much worse and they may have already spread the disease to others at this point.
Fair.
These symptoms can include prolonged cough, chest pain, weakness or fatigue, weight loss, fever, and night sweats, which is also like a lot of symptoms for the common flu or like something like that, you know? So like it's tough to catch.
Yeah, that's fair.
And what's also crazy, just like what we went through during the COVID-19 pandemic, is that if you inhale just a few germs or the Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the scientific name,
Thank you.
That causes TB, they can become infected. So just a few droplets of it will fuck you up.
We love that.
Now, unfortunately as well, just like with all illnesses, people with compromised immune systems are at a higher risk of contracting TB. This means people with malnutrition or diabetes, smokers, and people living with HIV are all at a higher risk. TB is, according to WHO, WHO, according to who?
I also, when people just like colloquially just like the Who.
Yeah, you think of the band.
I think of the band, and I'm like, why is the Who like making medical decisions for the world?
They're singing about pinball wizards, and they're making medical decisions.
Could you imagine though? How great! I want that skit.
Now, according to the WHO, TB is the leading cause of death of people with HIV. Their immune system is so fucked that they just are able to contract it very easily.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned a little earlier, how the TB isn't as present in the U.S. It is very much so present around the globe. Most cases will show up in low and middle income countries.
Okay.
Half of all people with TB can be found in only 8 countries.
Oh.
Those countries are Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Philippines, and South Africa.
Wow. Okay.
Right.
Collection. Yeah. Interesting collection of countries.
Yeah. And like those are usually the places that also have high case numbers of HIV and AIDS.
Okay.
As well. So like it all
There's a tie.
connects.
Yeah.
Now, also according to the WHO, approximately 25% of the global population is estimated to have been infected with TB, which is a pretty big chunk.
Yeah.
Now, before you freak out, though, settle down. Most people will not develop full-on TB, and some folks will even clear the infection on their own.
Oh, okay.
I think that's a little bit more rare.
Sure.
But those infected with TB bacteria but not fully ill, having a fully developed TB, can't transmit the disease.
Oh.
So if you have the germs inside you, but your body's able to qualm the infection, you're not at a risk for infecting other people. So that's nice. Good to know.
Yeah.
Now those, like I said, are all current statistics.
Okay.
If we jump back to the late 19th, early 20th century, like I started this podcast, 70 to 90% of the urban populations of Europe and North America were infected with the TB bacteria.
70 to 90%?
In both continents.
People were just coughing up blood left and right?
Yeah. There are a lot of cool there are a lot of cool posters propaganda posters of the time telling people to wear masks, cover up, don't cough or spit in public, and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to see those contrasts be brought up during the 2020 pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
But that's something for you to Google later. Now, okay, so we had 70 to 90% of the urban populations being infected. 80% of those people died from it.
Jesus.
This was, at the time, a pandemic of biblical terms that was spreading across the world. Now, it wasn't until Robert Koch's discovery of the tuberculosis bacillus that people even knew what to do about the consumption. For a long time, folks thought that this disease was just hereditary. Or it was something fancy to have, because people were calling what all the names that I said earlier, King's Evil, consumption, blah blah blah. They all thought that they were different illnesses, different diseases. You'll often hear, like, in older stories, be like, "Oh, I have the consumption," and like it's kind of like this fancy thing to have, like, "Oh, I'm losing weight." It's like the rich people, the urbanites are having it, you know?
Oh, weird. When disease is in fashion.
Right, exactly. It's a very weird time.
Yeah.
But then eventually, Robert Koch, he was like, "Nah, dude, like, this shit's terrible. Like, it's killing y'all. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's killing you."
Yeah.
So at this time, there wasn't much to do to detect, treat, or cure the disease. Fresh air was a legitimate treatment for the people with TB. Go get some fresh air.
Yeah.
And sanatoriums were these, like, some of them were kind of like prison-like, but they were these big hospital-type buildings popped up all across the country where people would sit outside on chairs, or even have their beds on balconies to rest and breathe in the fresh air. This is where we actually get Adirondack chairs. Adirondack chairs. I have a terrible time saying that word. I would also like to note that it is Allie's favorite chair. That's in my notes. I think she added it, but it's fine.
That's funny.
Yeah, so it would help you. These types of chairs would help you, like, prop yourself up.
Oh, yeah.
Permanently reclined type of chair, and you're just able to breathe in the fresh air. And as I was typing this out, a memory kind of unlocked for me that my mom was always, whenever I was sick as a kid, she was like, "Oh, go get some fresh air. It'll be good for you." And I was like, "Oh, fuck. Like, this is just like a generational thing." Like, I say that sometimes now. I'm like, "Oh, like, go get some fresh air. Like, it'll be good for you." To either myself or Allie. And it's just like, oh, shit. Like, this is just like a fucking TB generational thing coming down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty wild for me.
That's crazy. So where we got married, Theater on the Lake, before that, like, way back in the day, I'm pretty sure it was used as kind of like a sanatorium.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, for TB. Because, like, it was just kind of a structure, right? And then it had kind of open netted windows before. Obviously, it's very different today.
Right.
But I think they used that during TB time.
Oh, wow.
I know.
TB time.
TB time. It's TB time.
Yikes. So while spending time in sanatoriums could have helped some, there's some debate as to, like, what actually were helping these people.
Yeah.
What really helped spending time in these sanatoriums was the cleaner and more hygienic facilities these people were now living in compared to their urban environments, where everyone's on top of each other, dirtier, etc. I mean, that's at least if you were upper class. Those rich facilities offered excellent care and constant medical attention.
Of course.
Obviously, the further down the class ladder you go, the worse the facility gets.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Now, that's all about TB. Just putting it out there.
Heard.
Not all about. There's so much more about TB.
So much more about TB. Fair.
Okay. And like I said, there wasn't much to do about TB other than kind of hope for the best.
Sure.
So let's finally introduce Alan Hart.
Yes.
Hart lived for 71 years, from 1890 to 1962.
Okay.
My dyslexia tripped me up for a second. From 1980.
Right.
71 years, 1890 to 1962. Kind of the height of the TB outbreak in America. They were a physician, radiologist, writer, novelist, and most importantly for this story, a tuberculosis researcher. Hart graduated Albany College in 1912, added a Doctor of Medicine degree by 1917 from the University of Oregon, and at the same time also attended some courses at the Stanford University School of Medicine in the summer of 1916. This guy loved medical school.
That's crazy. It also felt like so much easier to get a medical degree back then. You just kind of like take some classes, watch a couple operations.
They're like, we used to use rusty saws. Now we have clean saws.
That's a slight difference. Yeah.
And by 1928, Hart obtained a master's degree in radiology from the University of Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Guy knew his stuff and was dedicated to the medical field.
Yeah.
Recognizing how big of an issue TB was at the time, Hart devoted almost all of his career into researching the disease. This was the big thing to tackle of the time. And during his research, Hart was one of the first physicians, actually, to document how TB spread through the body. And it did that by first attacking the lungs. You breathe it in, it gets in your lungs.
Yep.
And then from there, it goes into the circulatory system, which would then cause lesions on the kidneys, spine, and brain, eventually killing the patient.
Oh my God.
Terrible.
Horrifying.
With that information and knowing how it spreads, the airborne bacteria from coughing, spitting, speaking, there might be cause for a treatment if caught early enough. We know this. We can catch it while it's still in the lungs.
Yeah.
We might be able to treat TB in the early stages. So how do we detect the presence of tuberculosis without symptoms being present? Like I said, they kind of lie dormant or they're very subtle.
Yeah.
Which once they become present, it's kind of too late.
Yeah.
Well, in 1895, the Roentgen rays were discovered.
The what?
The Roentgen?
Roentgen.
Now you might call these X-rays.
Oh, I was like, what the fuck are you talking? You're looking at me like I should know what this is.
Nick, what the fuck?
Come on. The Roentgen?
You weren't around for after World War II when they went from the Roentgen to being called the X-rays?
How could
Idiot.
Stupid. I was born 50 years later.
I was born in the wrong generation. So I'll call them X-rays from now on. Don't worry.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, at the time, X-rays were really only used to detect bone fractures and tumors, but Hart had a different idea. He believed that he could use this new technology of X-rays as an early detection method of TB, and he was correct. Images of a healthy lung looked completely different from a lung that had TB running around in there.
Like they're playing.
Running around the maypole in your lungs.
Yeah, exactly.
Terrifying image. So this meant the disease could be detected before it became severe. Treatment could be started earlier, and infected people could be identified and isolated sooner, lessening the spread of the disease. By the 1940s, antibiotics were introduced to the party, and in combination with Hart's early detection method, doctors were able to cut the tuberculosis death toll down to 1/50th of what it used to be.
Oh my God. Incredible.
Drastic improvement.
Yeah.
Now, Hart didn't stop there with just this one idea. Between 1933 and 1945, Hart traveled all around rural Idaho to conduct mass TB screenings, lecture on the subject, train new staff, and treat some patients.
Okay.
He was already out in the Pacific Northwest a lot.
Why? I don't know.
Doing stuff for like the I think he went to like the University of Oregon, I think I said earlier, and Stanford University, blah, blah, blah. So he was already over there. Also, like rural Idaho, no one's taking care of those poor people. Gotta do it.
Gotta do it. Someone's gotta do it.
Exactly. Might as well be Alan Hart. Yeah, so he's out there, lecture on the subject, train new staff, treat some patients, like I said. And then he also established Idaho's first mobile and brick and mortar TB screening clinics.
Okay.
And then in 1937, he was hired by the Idaho Tuberculosis Association, later becoming the state's TB control officer. So he was doing such a good job maintaining the infection that the state was like,
whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever you need.
That's awesome.
Now, while a lot of his work was in Idaho, Hart did travel around a lot to educate the country. He worked at clinics and sanatoriums all over, including in New Mexico, Washington, and Illinois.
Hey.
There was actually a TB sanatorium in Rockford.
Okay.
That an official one.
Yeah.
A big enough building where it's like, here you go. Allen wrote countless articles for medical journals, public productions talking about TB, spreading the knowledge, spreading the information, describing prevention, detection, and cure at technical and general terms for both the scientific field as well as everyman Joe kind of thing. So everyone can understand what the hell this disease is.
Yeah.
And by 1948, Hart was appointed the station that he would hold for the remaining of his life.
Sure.
The remainder of his life. He was appointed director. This is a long title, so give me a second. Appointed Director of Hospitalization and Rehabilitation for the Connecticut State Tuberculosis Commission.
Oh my God.
Right? That's just a jumble of words.
I couldn't have pared that down.
Why isn't there an acronym for this?
Correct.
So Hart, while holding that station, did what he did for Idaho, but for the state of Connecticut on the East Coast.
Okay.
Just like he contained the spread of TB through the Pacific Northwest, Hart also is credited with containing it in Connecticut, which is great.
Yeah.
And because of Allen Hart's extensive research into this disease, most of it still being used today as reference, many programs based off of his works were developed. And that went on to save thousands and thousands of lives to this day.
That's awesome.
You're probably wondering, Devin, this is a Pride episode. What does that have to do with tuberculosis?
Tell me more.
Well, as John Green would say, everything has to do with tuberculosis.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, John Green, brother of Hank Green. Famous author. He is currently obsessed, and I think has been for quite some time, about tuberculosis. And like the story that he's currently writing or like making a movie about has to deal with tuberculosis. And like he just jumps on TikTok and just like, hey, cowboy hats? That was because of tuberculosis. And he goes on to explain why cowboy hats came from tuberculosis.
Not because of the sun?
It is, but it's yes.
Okay. Different episode.
Yeah, different episode.
Heard.
So everything has to do with tuberculosis.
Got it.
But also, here is the twist no one was expecting, and I'm surprised no one at Hollywood has picked up this story yet.
Tell me more.
Allen Hart was trans.
Oh.
Trans man.
Okay.
So sometime around 1917, Allen Hart became one of the first documented trans men to undergo a hysterectomy in the U.S.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So I'm going to get into that story.
Okay. Yeah, I got questions.
No, go ahead. What's your question?
No, I guess my question is just like, clearly at the time was able to make such an impact in the medical field as a trans man. Like, was it known? Was it hush-hush? Was it, you know what I mean? Like, but I feel like you're going to get into it. So.
Both.
Yeah.
It was known. There were some unfortunate outings that kind of led to witch hunts of sorts. And people just kind of were also accepting of it.
Okay.
Ish.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a well-known thing.
Sure.
But people were like, he's saving lives. So
right. Well, and you said he passed in 1962.
Correct.
So like towards the end of his life, he's going through like kind of
yes,
the Lavender Scare and McCarthyism and all of that. So
I'll get into his whole story.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So in all accounts of Allen's early life, also I keep jumping between calling him Allen and Hart.
I get it.
Thank you. In all accounts of Allen's early life, it is said that he often preferred to present masculine. Even at a young age, he wanted to dress like a boy, play like a boy, and partake in more traditionally male activities. There was a time when Hart, as a child, lived on his grandparents' farm where he got to freely express his gender. Surprisingly, his grandparents accepted and supported this his gender expression, even listing him as a grandson in their respective obituaries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I thought that was very surprising for his grandparents to be like, yeah, that's cool, dude.
Yeah.
Quote.
Verbatim.
It was during his school years that Alan ran into a little bit of trouble.
Okay.
He was often forced to be more femme, wearing traditionally female clothes, despite trousers being more comfortable for him. And he would have much rather referred to himself as a boy, but he was often pressured to sign and present as his female self from his peers, seniors, staff, etc. Everyone. During his schooling as well, Alan wrote a short story in 1909 titled My Irish Colleen for the March 1909 issue of Albany College Student. He submitted it anonymously, too many M's, for it was a love poem about an Irish girl from the perspective of an anonymous male student.
Okay.
And it was well regarded to the point where in 1911 it was reprinted in his college yearbook, but under his female name, which wound up outing his crush on Eva Cushman.
No.
Alan and Eva were actually dating the entire time while he was in college, throughout their college years, but this was ultimately an outing issue.
I get... In my head, I go, how could she not have known? And then you have to remember, like, far less, promiscuous than people are today. So just, like, clearly, like, 4 years and she hasn't seen anything? Yeah, no.
They were dating throughout their college years.
Correct.
And Eva Alan wound up, like, jumping around to different schools, like I mentioned earlier, to get with all of his medical degrees, and Eva wound up following him around to all these schools.
Oh, okay.
So they stuck together throughout college. I don't know when they broke up after college, but...
Got it. Through college.
Got it. In his later schooling, he was able to write essays under his chosen name because writing things was with a pseudonym was popular at the time.
Sure.
But ultimately, he had his medical degree issued under his old female name. This would cause problems, of course, if employers were to look up his name to check his credentials or anything like that. They would see the female name or no record at all of Alan. There was one professor or someone who put like AKA. He was going by Robert Bramford Jr. a lot at the time until eventually he chose Alan Hart. But sometimes one of his pseudonyms would be A. Hart or A.H. But one of his medical papers has AKA Robert Bramford Jr. next to his old name.
Okay. What's interesting is that even as that he was able to get like medical degrees and like be taken with like respectability even as a woman at the time in that field. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or with a woman's name at the time.
And I think part of it is that he was presenting so masculine, wearing suits, trousers, combing his hair short and whatnot, saying like more masculine terms and referring to himself in a masculine way as well. That everyone's like, yeah, this dude's just being a doctor, and it's like, oh shit,
dude being a dude,
right? So there was all of that kind of issue with his schooling, and that was his struggle throughout until he became an adult.
Got it.
So after his schooling and once he reached adulthood, Hart went through psychiatric counseling and surgery to continue his gender expression. It was like, I don't ever want to have to deal with trying to present female ever again.
Yeah.
I just want to live my life how I want it to be.
Yeah.
So he wound up meeting with Joshua Allen Gilbert, PhD, MD, to perform the hysterectomy. To perform a hysterectomy so that he could eliminate menstruation and the possibility of ever becoming pregnant.
Amazing.
Now, Josh was reluctant at first.
Sure.
It's of the time, of course.
Yeah.
But after many evaluations, deemed that this was the only way for Hart to ever be happy. There were so many talks and meetings between Josh and Alan that Josh, the doctor, was like, this is going to be the best option for him.
Yeah.
Hart was using phrases like the other fellows and I, as well as what could a fellow do. And so to Josh, Hart already passed as a male, stating, quote, many Kodak pictures of H, he referred to Alan as H in his notes.
Okay.
Many Kodak pictures of H have been exhibited as those of a man without being questioned.
Wow. Yeah.
So during the winter break between 1917 and 1918, Josh performed the surgery on Alan, after which Alan legally changed his name to Alan L. Hart.
Got it. Okay.
So in February 1918, Hart married his first wife, Inez Stark. They had like a church wedding and everything. It was great.
Gorgeous.
I was there.
I was there.
The band was all right. But Hart and Inez soon had to move to Gardner, Oregon, after he was outed by a former classmate while interning at the San Francisco hospital.
Oh, bullshit.
Someone recognized him, called him out, and like presented papers with his old name and all this other stuff. It was like, come on, dude.
That's my thing, is like, it was such a bigger effort to do something like that back then than it is now. I'm like, can you just, who's got time for that? Like, you got time to collect papers and like
these
show
assholes,
people?
apparently.
Like,
yeah.
Jesus.
However, their time in Oregon was also cut short, as once again, Hart was outed by another former medical school classmate. They wound up moving to Montana, where he, quote, did operations in barns and houses till the crash of the autumn of 1920 wiped out most of the Montana farmers and stockmen, and Hart along with them, end quote. So he was forced to just kind of do these secret operations on people and folks to try to help them with TB, etc.
Sure.
And try to build up a name for himself with his new name. Now, despite the trauma from his two former classmates, Hart declared that he was, quote, happier since I made this change than I ever have in my life, and I will continue this way as long as I live. I have never concealed anything regarding my change to men's clothing. I came home to show my friends that I am ashamed of nothing, end quote.
Amazing.
And so by 1920, synthetic hormones were being manufactured by Bayer and became available to the public after World War II, which Hart began taking, which led to furthering the masculinization of his transition.
Okay.
He was able to grow a full beard and shave at this point. His voice pitched lower. And this all, of course, gave Hart more confidence in himself and his public appearance, since he was receiving gender-affirming care.
Yeah.
One of the great things to receive.
Crazy. Gender-affirming care in, what,
1948 at this time?
Oh, you said post-war. Yeah.
Bayer developed it in the 20s, but then it became publicly available after World War II.
And he's like, yeah, I'm just going to take some gender-affirming care.
Yeah,
totally fine.
Yeah, so he was able to take some testosterone. He was like, great, this is fucking awesome.
Fucking awesome. Incredible.
I'm jumping around a little bit in time here.
Sure.
But Inez wound up leaving Alan in 1923 and finally divorced him in 1925.
Why?
Between all of the financial instability of the stock market crash,
sure,
on top of the secrecy of Hart's transition, and the frequent moving because of all these outings and whatnot, it was just a little bit too much for Inez.
Sure.
I get it. But still. But with, like, you know, doors opening and closing, yada, yada, Hart married his second and final wife, Edna Reddick, that same year of 1925.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, happy ending there.
Look at
This is when Alan Hart really takes off. He accomplishes everything that I listed earlier regarding TB research and much more. He wrote short stories and novels, some of which had some autobiographical topics and typically surrounded medical themes.
Okay.
Never directly being an autobiography, but like he implemented some of his life experience into his stories.
Sure.
Like every author does.
Right.
By 1948, the couple moved to Hartford, Connecticut, where they lived out the rest of their lives. So this is where they hang out for the rest of their days. Edna became a professor at the University of Hartford. Wow. Not Harvard, Hartford.
Thank you.
And like I mentioned earlier, Hart became the Director of Hospitalization and Rehabilitation for the Connecticut State Tuberculosis Commission.
I like that you gave the full title again.
Of course. It's called a bit.
It's called a bit.
And near the end of his life, Hart spent his time giving lectures and fundraising for medical research and to support patients with TB who couldn't afford the treatments.
Nice.
Now, Alan Hart died of heart failure on July 1st, 1962. In his will, Alan wanted to establish a fund for research into leukemia, what his mother had died from.
Got it.
And this was carried out with the interest on his estate being annually donated to the Alan L. and Edna Reddick Hart Fund, which provides grants for research into leukemia and its care.
Oh, that's awesome.
I believe that fund is kind of hyper-localized into something in Oregon or Connecticut. I'm not too sure where. I couldn't find too much information on that exact fund.
Got it. Okay.
There might be a better detective out there than me. Now, so that is everything that Alan Hart did. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, after Hart's death, there was some controversy of people trying to rewrite history. In the 70s through 80s, so Alan died in 60s. Mm-hmm. So shortly after his death, this guy, Jonathan Ned Katz, tried to claim Hart was actually a lesbian and referred to him with his old female name.
Oh.
Like they never talked about Alan with the name Alan.
Yeah.
Katz wasn't the only one either. Everyone was like, no. They weren't trans. It was just a lesbian.
Weird.
The Oregon Gay and Lesbian Rights PAC, called Right to Privacy, which I believe is no longer around, often dead-named Hart, naming diners and fundraisers after him. Now, granted, this fundraiser did do a lot of good. It did raise over $100,000 annually, but it still just wasn't cool to dead name Alan.
Right.
And the Right to Privacy claimed in 1995, quote, "We continue to believe that Lucille Hart made a choice to represent herself as a man based on the oppression of society at large. It is our belief that by honoring the beginning of her life as a woman, as well as the end of her life as a man, we bring greater dignity and respect to one of the Oregon's greatest lesbian and gay heroes." End quote.
Oh, that's fucked.
So essentially, they were all saying pretty much the same thing. Hart had no choice but to live as a man so that they could openly love a woman.
That's
which might be the case for some people out there, of course, but not the case for Alan Hart.
Right. Especially after like all of the notes from his doctor, like he was very much so of mind.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? To be a man.
Yeah, there was so much correspondence and his own personal letters.
Right.
That were eventually like burned after his death as part of his will.
Yeah.
That referred to himself as a man, that he was like, I am a man.
Right.
Etc. So like, it's just like really fucked up. And there was a lot of back and forth through the 80s, 90s, and even the early 2000s, making sure that there was no trans erasure for Alan Hart's story. Yeah. There was a group of people they were like, no, like, you're fucking wrong. Like, Alan was a trans man. Like, this is ridiculous. How dare you?
Yeah.
There were lots of arguments within the queer community, including some protests at lectures about Hart's life, where they would stand up in the middle of it. This was like a fundraiser lecture or whatever. Uh-huh. These protesters would stand up, unfurl a big-ass banner, and the banner would say his name was Alan, because it would be like a lecture like Lucille Hart,
got it,
a gay icon, the story,
sure,
type of lecture, whatever it was.
It is. It's crazy because I feel like a lot of times, like, there's always, you think of like erasure when it comes to gays, lesbians, things of that nature, but you don't think about trans erasure in the sense of trying to pull them into a different minority group, right?
Right.
Like, it's one thing to be like, oh, they were always a woman, this is just pretend, whatever. It's another thing to say,
right,
they
this
were
isn't
trans,
in the Bible. Right.
They're a lesbian. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I didn't get either. I was like, the fuck, you're punching laterally. Right. Like, you're not doing anything to help anybody here.
I mean, of course, there's within the community, there's a lot of like inter-conflict, and that, of course, kind of plays into it. But it's interesting to be like, well, no, clearly they wouldn't be trans, like a part of our own community. They're clearly a lesbian.
Right.
Like, it is an interesting kind of take, especially, Anyway.
I was really annoyed when I got to this part of the research. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this sucks.
I would have rather have them been like, he was a woman that liked to pretend they were a man, versus he was a lesbian. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I would rather you like whitewash it in like heteronormative affair than like put them into a different class of the homosexual community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of annoying.
There was a lot of arguments at the time, and it took a lot to convince certain groups within the queer community that Alan was indeed trans and not a lesbian presenting masculine. Now, thankfully, it is widely accepted today that Alan Hart was a transgender man. Many publications will note that he was one of the first FTM transgender people to undergo a hysterectomy, like I said earlier. Scientific American published an article that referred to Hart as a, quote, trailblazing transgender doctor, end quote, in 2021. And even supposedly that guy Katz even changed his mind and said he wouldn't portray Hart as a lesbian today.
Thank God.
Right.
Also, like, when was Katz around? You know what I mean?
Yeah, he just wrote the article like in the 70s after Hart's death. He looked at all of the in his story, like he looked at all of the correspondence between Josh and Alan, the doctor and Alan, being like, "Oh, clearly Alan's just a lesbian." And I was like, "Dude, that's not his story."
How about no one fucking asked you?
Thank you. There was some notes that I didn't include in my research, but it was like. Katz like tried to reach out to Alan's widow while she was still around, and she was like, "No, I'm not going to even like bother with you." Like, she had her friend respond to Katz, and the friend passed along a note that was like, "Just let it lie. Like, she is so sad that the love of her life just recently died.
Right.
Fuck off." Was paraphrasing the note,
right. Verbatim, right? That's nuts.
And like, she was upset that that Katz was trying to like tarnish the story of Alan, and like I think if I remember correctly, like one of the quotes was like she was offended that that Katz was calling Alan and herself a lesbian, because in fact, like, Edna was in love with a man, was in love with Alan.
Yeah.
She was like, "No, we're not a lesbian couple. Like, I love Alan, the man I married.
Right.
Fuck off."
That's nuts.
To lighten the ending, though,
okay.
To get us all back in good spirits, I'm going to end this whole episode with this quote from Alan Hart that he said to a class of graduating medical students. Quote, "Each of us must take into account the raw material which hereditary dealt us at birth and the opportunities we have had along the way, and then work out for ourselves a sensible evaluation of our personalities and accomplishments." End quote.
Nice. I like that.
So,
way to end it.
I needed something to bring us back.
Yeah.
Because like Alan did so many great things for the research of tuberculosis, the fund for leukemia research and whatnot, that I didn't want it to end on the sour note of people trying to rewrite history.
Right.
So yeah, that is the story of Alan Hart. Some would say the trailblazing transgender doctor.
Oh, I thought you were going to go like a whole alliteration thing there.
I was just requoting the Scientific American article.
That too. Yeah. No, that's incredible. I had no idea. I had no idea that he had done all of that.
Yeah, I thought it was a really fun story.
Now, he did a lot to help cure TB, but did he come up with did I miss that? He didn't come up with like the cure. No.
He just did a lot of research on the disease, came up with a way to detect it to make it easily more curable.
Sure. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
And I'm sure some of his research along the way helped develop
I'm sure.
some stuff into it. But no, he is most famously for doing all of the clinics and sanatoriums across the country, coming up with the detection, etc.
Okay.
Really just knowing everything there is about TB and telling everybody, this is what it is, this is how you deal with it.
I mean, smart to go with x-rays.
Very.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's a new technology. It was invented when Alan was 5 years old only. So, like, it's brand new.
Yeah.
And to use that to try to detect it in the lungs, because even, like, lower tech x-rays were able to help detect TB in the lungs.
Yeah.
So,
no, that's awesome.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for bringing out some trans stories.
I was very excited about it. I have another a doctor story for later this month that we'll talk about.
Okay, perfect.
So we're excited about that one. But yeah, thanks for listening. Happy Pride, everybody. Hope you're having a great month, and thanks for sticking around. Thanks for subscribing. Yes. But if you haven't already, make sure to check us out all across the internet at WDYK_podcast.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks, Nick.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.